very proud to announce is that there's going to be a unique event here, and we think it's collectively all part of our efforts here at Landing Country Club. The Gene Sarazen Par 3 Match Play Championship is going to be played right here on our Par 3 course at Smithtown Landing. This is going to be an absolutely wonderful event. The championship will take place on opening evening and Thursday, July 25th, and the opening ceremony will run through the end of the weekend along with the tournament. The person that's going to actually work with our golf professional Mike Hebron on this to bring this event to Landing is Mr. David Capo, the person who was inspired to create the Par 3 match event. And I'd like David to say a few words about how he came to that point and why he picked Smithtown Landing. So, David, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. So just a short history is we embarked on a 5-year project in the town of Smithtown, and part of that is understanding the history of Smithtown because it's a fascinating place. I don't know if you guys have heard of Netflix, but on Netflix is a TV show called Turn, and it talks about the North Shore spy ring back in the day, and a lot of it took place in these territories, or in this territory. So by pure chance, we came across an old map showing the Nissaquag River, some of the original owners of the properties around here, and that got us curious. And we've tracked the Nissaquag River north and recognized that Smithtown Landing Country Club may have been part of the original states in the 1800s. So I came down here and I talked with Michael, and I asked him about the history of Smithtown Landing, and he told me about the course and the original country club. And then we started chatting about this Par 3 course that's tucked up into the hills. And he mentioned that the golf legend Gene Sarazen was involved in designing this Par 3 course. So that further encouraged the curiosity, which led to a conversation with the World Golf Hall of Fame, who then referred us over to the Sarazen Foundation, who eventually put us in contact with Mary Ann Sarazen, who's Gene Sarazen's oldest daughter. And sure enough, the evening of July 25th, it will be an opening ceremony from 6 to 9 p.m. To kick off this Par 3 championship. And then the event takes place on the 27th and 28th. It's what we call a match play environment. So in the golf world, that means people play directly against each other, not necessarily a big score amongst all the other golfers, but it's heads up. So it's a fun environment, and the structure that was set up was done so that everybody at all different types of skill levels could compete and have a good time. So we're encouraging the public to come out on the 25th and the 27th and 28th to either enjoy us at the opening ceremony party or root on some of the golfers that are going to be competing for the Sarazen flag. There'll be a custom flag created, which will have the town's name, all those involved name embroidered into the flag, and then the finalists of the match play will have their names also embroidered into the flag, and per Mary Ann Sarazen, that will then be displayed in the Gene Sarazen Museum and Exhibit. So it'll be kind of fun. So I thank the town for all the work that they've done. Michael was very inspirational to me years ago when I started taking up the game of golf. Gave me some good, wise counsel. So hopefully everybody can come out and support it, and thank you very much.
Congratulations and welcome to the inaugural the Squire Par 3 Championship being held at Smithtown Landing Country Club. Welcome. I understand everybody's busy, have different responsibilities, families, work, etc. So the fact that everybody took some time out on a Thursday night to come hang out together, socialize, have some food, have some fun is simply fantastic. It really is, so I appreciate it. But before we get into the rest of the shenanigans for the evening, I'd like to give thanks to a number of different individuals and entities. So please hold any applause until the end, but we have some thanks. So first, I'd like to thank the 32 players that entered the event, that have the guts to compete in such a prestigious event. And we wish you luck. We wish you have a good time, good competition. We appreciate it, and without players, there's no event. So we wish you guys all the luck. Next, we'd like to thank the golf course. We'd like to thank Michael Hebron, Henry Kilroy, Tim Shellhorse, the pro staff, the pro shop, the starters, the people that maintain the course, that have committed over the last few months, on top of all of the other responsibilities that they have, to turn that little par 3 course into a great venue to hold a match play tournament. So really appreciate it, and thanks for the confidence in us in getting it done. We'd also like to thank the town of Smithtown and the officials and the service teams and the technology groups and all the people that work in parks, because if everybody hasn't noticed, over the last few months, the amount of trucks that have been here doing work at the facility has been substantial. The course grounds, the facilities look fantastic. And again, without them committing to making this place pretty special, we couldn't have put this together as well. So want to, again, say thanks for all the help. And then lastly, the reason we're all here is to celebrate a gentleman that is a legend in the game, Mr. Gene Saracen. And the Saracen family, Mary Ann Saracen, Patty, Buster, drove 900 miles to be here to celebrate tonight and honor their dad in this, again, course that we all starting to come to love, if not already, the Saracen Par 3 Learning Links. So let's give everybody a round of applause for this time.
Aside from the business end of it, I have a lot of fond memories here. I do want to thank and introduce a couple people that are on our government team that are here tonight. Very important that we do that. Also, it should be known that in conjunction with Michael Hebron taking this course over as MPH, a number of years ago, and I can't pinpoint it, Smithtown Landing was named in Golf Digest as one of the top 33 municipal golf courses in the United States of America. And that's something that Smithtown can be very, very proud of. That's a great goal. And today, I will tell you it's even better. I want to just say a quick thanks to the players that are in the tournament. My friend Ken Boss has signed up, and Kim and a bunch of other people have signed up. I wish I could have signed up, but duty calls, and this weekend we're booked up with some street namings for veterans and things of that nature. So I'm counting on my friends to get out there and represent. So good luck to everybody who plays in the tournament. I wish you all well. I want to say a special thanks here tonight to someone who I consider a good friend and has taken this journey in this country club with me all the way. And that's PGA Hall of Fame Master Professional Michael Hebron. Michael. Thank you very much for being a partner. It's been wonderful to work with you for so many years, and I know into the future we will continue to do that. Michael does a huge amount for the community as well. He's not just teaching golf here, he does a lot for the school districts, for the community, for civic groups. He's a real community person, and we respect him for that. I also want to thank Tim Shellhorse. Tim, golf course superintendent. Course has never looked better. He's doing just an absolutely wonderful job.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Squire. A great event that David has put together. with time and resources to make this happen. Congratulations. It's off and running. And a special welcome to the Saracen family. Thank you for coming. We've lived with that name forever, and now we have a blood relative here. It's very exciting that you found the time in your schedule to come. This golf course has been recognized several times for awards. Perhaps when Arthur Poole and his friend Gene Saracen was asked to create a 9-hole golf course, that was the icing on the cake. We have a 9-hole golf course where you pay one fee and you can play all day. It's a place where you can go work on your short game, which is the foundation for golf, the most important part of golf. There's a golf course where golfers can play and not be intimidated by being on the golf course with people that already know how to play. Yeah, go up on a par 3 golf course. It's a golf course where moms and dads and children can play together. Course where we can say in a New York way, what a deal! Huh? What a deal! Thank you, Mr. Saracen. Thank you, Mr. Saracen. I added a name to the golf course. I call it the Learning Links, where you play to learn. All learning is based on play. Play with a computer, play with a recipe, play with the steering wheel. Gene Saracen Par 3 Learning Links. What a nice sound. Thank you, David, and congratulations. It's quite a thing you've put together.
And we, too, would like to thank all the players that are going to participate, Michael and his staff, the golf course people, everybody that put everything together, Ed and the town, and to David, who brought life to the history of Gene Saracen and Marywood Country Club. Now, David asked me to say a few words, and I'm not really a public speaker, but I had a little idea of putting together something or telling you a little something about Dad's life that I hoped you might find either new or something interesting. He lived for 97 years, almost 80 of them was as a professional golfer, most of it long before my time. His beginnings were very humble. His parents, Adela and Federico Serracini, excuse my pronunciation, had come from Rome and settled in Harrison, New York. They had 2 children, a daughter, Margaret, and a son, Eugenio. His father was a good carpenter, but a very poor businessman, and times were tough. To help the family, Dad began caddying at 8 years of age, and by 11, he left school and worked full-time as a caddy at Appomattox, and it was there that he met Ed Sullivan. They were assigned numbers 98 and 99, and needless to say, sat around a lot. After 4 or 5 years of caddying and practicing his golf, Dad decided he wanted to try playing golf for a living. He was about 16, and he moved up to Bridgeport, Connecticut, and one day, while playing in a tournament, he had a hole-in-one, and his name appeared in the newspaper. Golf was a very tough sport, and to get into it, he thought his name had to look better than a violin player, which is what he thought. So he decided to change his name, and of course, we always love this story. He practiced all different spellings, and he finally came up with Sarazen, checked the phone book, found no others, and decided he had a new name. I can't imagine that happening today. By the age of 20, he had won 2 major tournaments, the U.S. Open and the PGA. And I remember in 1997, when a 21-year-old Tiger Woods had won the Masters, and someone from the press had asked Dad what he thought of Tiger. He said he was very impressed and he was sure that he was going to win many more tournaments. But Dad also reminded that same press person that Sarazen had won 2 major tournaments by the time he was 20 years old. In all, Dad won 7 majors, 38 PGA events, and was the member of 6 Ryder Cup teams, beginning with the very first one in 1927 in Worcester. Dad's father never approved of his son playing golf, and the only time he ever watched him was during the 1923 PGA at Pelham, New York, which was near his home. His father stood outside on the sidewalk and watched Dad miss a 40 to 50-foot putt. Disgusted, he left, and later that evening said to him, "They pay you people money to do that, and you can't even put the ball in the hole." It was kind of sad. His father was very, very unhappy. But on the other hand, his mother was a very sweet and gentle woman, and I must say that my dad did take very good care of both of them, and they both lived long lives. In 1923, Dad met my mother, and this is another great story. He was 21 years old and had won major events. She was 16, vacationing in Florida with her mother at the Miami Biltmore Hotel. Dad asked the dining room hostess to introduce them. Within a year, my dad had convinced my grandmother to let them get married. And I also there's a picture over there of my mother and dad in those are when they were very young. 16 and 22, I think they are in those pictures. 1935, Dad won the Masters tournament and became the first pro to win the Grand Slam of golf, all 4 major tournaments. And today there are 5 of them: Ben Hogan, Jack Nicklaus, Gary Player, and Tiger Woods. Tiger won the Grand Slam 2 months after Dad had died, and it was too bad because Dad would have really enjoyed seeing that. And again, I also brought a picture of Dad with the other 3 who were the original Grand Slam winners. In 1935, Dad had his famous double eagle. On the 15th hole, which is a par 5, he hit his drive about 270 yards. Then he hit the next shot about 200 yards. It bounced a couple of times and rolled into the cup. Only 20 or 30 people were really there. But over the years, at least, Dad used to say, at least 20,000 have said they were there. He also mentioned he would always been pleased that Bobby Jones saw the double eagle, as well as Walter Hagen, who was playing with him. And I also found later, through some little bit of research, as I understand, Byron Nelson was also there, and that was his very first Masters, and he happened to see it. Grantland Rice, who was one of the writers of the day, was there and really saw it, and he's the one that coined the shot heard round the world, which to this day, the Masters makes mention of that golf shot in 1935 as the shot heard round the world. Everyone talks about the double eagle, but Dad always felt his greatest contribution to golf was his invention of the modern-day sand wedge. He got the idea in 1939 while watching the plane take off during flying lessons with Howard Hughes. He began to work on his club while he was wintering down in Newport Richey, Florida. Added some lead to the back of his niblick to get some bounce to keep the club from digging in the sand. It became his secret weapon, as he called it, and he always referred to it. That was my secret weapon. In 1932, after he won the British Open, he brought it out. Both the R&A and the USGA checked it over carefully and gave it their blessing. And I also see there's a picture over there of him with his US Open and his British Open trophies, and that was to him his best year. The press really liked Dad because he always gave them a story. In the late 1930s, he had a farm in Connecticut. We lived in Brookfield Center, Connecticut, and the press gave him a name of the Squire because most golfers at that time were not living on farms. A lot of them were having a lot of trouble making a living. One of his biggest dislikes was slow play. And he would mention it every single year. The USGA, all of the organizations loved it because he was always the one that would bring up slow play. He had a quote, "Miss 'em quick." And during the 1947 Masters tournament, he and George Fazio played 18 holes in 1 hour and 57 minutes, and that set a record.
Toronto would be impressed.
Yeah. Each February 27th, and it had to be on that exact date, was his birthday golf tournament at the Island Country Club on Marco Island. It usually turned into a 2 or 3 day visit with family and friends, and proceeds from that fundraiser went to the Gina Mary Sarrazin Foundation on Marco Island. And Dad really enjoyed being involved in dispersing the funds for the organizations. But at the same time, he said, now don't forget you've got to have a little endowment fund because I'm not going to be here. And he says, we've got to keep this going. We can't spend all this money. A lot of his New England thrift. April was his annual trip to Augusta. Same schedule every year. He would arrive on Sunday preceding the tournament, have dinner with longtime friends from Wilson Sporting Goods, family and friends. Then Tuesday evening, my son, who traveled with him, would get him to the Champions Dinner. During the days, lots of interviews, always interviews, until he just got absolutely, even to the last year. He played in 1999, that April, he was at Augusta, and he went through all this, gave interviews. He was 97 years old, and my son teed up the ball. I don't know whether any of you saw it. Some of you may have seen it. There were 20,000 there that day. And he hit this beautiful ball right down the middle. Maybe went 120 yards. Sam Snead was here. Byron Nelson was here. But Masters Week, Tuesday evening, my son would get him to the dinner, and then after all of the interviews, they continued to talk about the double eagle. And I, over the years, have gone to the 15th hole, and it's kind of fun because you hear the players as they're coming up to it, because there's a little, I think it's like a sprinkler head, and they kind of know that that's where it was. And they try during the practice rounds, and you can hear them talking. But on Thursday, the Masters tournament would begin. My dad and son would get to the range about 7:30 in the morning. It was usually cold, sometimes very windy. Dad would hit about 6 balls, and that was the only practice that he ever did from one year to the next. Then he'd hit the first tee with Sam Snead and Byron Nelson. They'd hit their shots, take some pictures, and he was finished. Each August was his trip to Siena College up in Loudonville, New York, for a golf tournament that benefits the Gene Sarrazin Scholarship Fund. In 1978, he had been awarded an honorary degree and was very proud of it. You remember, I told you he left school when he was 11 years old. To this day, again, we have an endowment that's worth about $2.5 million, and we give out 22 scholarships, $5,000 apiece, and the students may renew them each year for 4 years. So we've been very proud of that. Dad was really pretty easygoing. He loved his pasta, and had to have good grated Italian cheese. He had a friend, Slicker Sam, who owned an Italian restaurant in Chicago. Slicker would send 5-pound bags of grated cheese. We would repackage and freeze it. Never got through one 5-pound bag before Dad had called Slicker to send more. He also had a friend who owned a pecan farm in Georgia. Again, 5-pound boxes of whole unsalted pecans would arrive. We would repackage and freeze them too. And when Dad died, his freezer had cheese and pecans. And his closet had, people would give him, he liked Chivas Regal. And of course, as the years progressed, he really couldn't drink it, but they always seemed to give him cases of Chivas. And his closet was literally, my daughter knows, filled with cases of Chivas and golf balls. There were so many stories. There were books, there were articles, and when Dad turned 90, Golf World magazine even put out an edition of his whole life in chronological order. It was a great magazine. And as I continue to sort through letters, pictures, and awards, I have found that he had met who's who of the time, from presidents to movie stars to royalty to sports figures, the business world, and the list just goes on and on. Recently, I did come across a 1920s picture of Will Rogers and Dad at the racetrack in Miami. Now, Mrs. Vanderbilt had a racehorse that she named Saracen, and it turned out, again, I went through history and found that this horse had been a big winner and is the Horse Hall of Fame, I think it is. As my brother and I were growing up, Dad's tournament days, for the most part, were over. There was a little travel for business, but we lived in upstate New York, in Germantown, about 30 miles south of Albany, on a 350-acre fruit and cattle farm. Dad would hire some of our friends to help pick the fruit, and we all ate much more than we ever picked. We also had an old Army Jeep that I remember when I was about 13, Dad showed me how to shift and drive it, and I was off and running, and I'm still off and running. When my brother and I wanted to impress our friends, we would get Dad to line up, maybe 10 or 12 golf balls, and we'd bring out the old broom from the kitchen, and Dad would just go right down the line, and he would hit every single ball, and every single ball would be up and over. It was quite something to watch. They had great hand-eye coordination right to the time he died. I mean, he would play a few holes with my son down at Marco Island, and that last hole, he could maybe chip it in here or he'd putt it here, all for a quarter. During my high school graduation from Penn Hall in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, we had a father-daughter golf tournament. We had a little 9-hole golf course around the campus, and the first hole across the front of the school, it had 30-foot pine trees cut the fairway right in half. Dad proceeded to hit his drive right up over all the trees. And one of the fathers, I'll never forget it, one of the fathers behind us said, "Boy, he hit that like a pro." I didn't even think too much about it, but I was kind of embarrassed when I walked up to win the trophy for the father. Now, and I want to end with just a couple of, Dad had lots of fun stories, but these were a couple that he really enjoyed, and in 1927, Dad would have been 25 years old, and he was a little cocky. He went to Rome, and I should add that he was, and this was in 1927, he was asked to play golf with Mussolini, and this was long before Mussolini was such a tyrant. And I have the scorecard to prove it. The story goes that Dad and Johnny Farrell, another pro golfer, were invited to Rome by the American ambassador. Upon arrival by train, Dad said to Johnny Farrell, "They sure know Saracen is in Rome," because there was a red carpet all rolled out. Dad asked the secretary, and he said, "Oh, no, the Pope just left for his country home." And then another one that he also, again, when he was in his early 20s, he was waiting for a train at Pelham Station to go into New York. And he noticed some of the pretty showgirls from the Ziegfeld Follies were also standing there. And of course, he would look at them and he said, they didn't even give me, he said, a tumble. And he said, many years later, while out in Palm Springs, a woman asked if she could meet him. He said, yes. And the woman asked him if he remembered riding that train many years back. He said, yes, he did. And she said, I was one of those women. I am Mrs. Bob Hope. And again, my family and I thank you for honoring Gene Sarazen, and I know he would be very pleased that you all are doing this. And we thank you.
So I want to thank the players. I wish you guys luck. I hope that you're really nervous and have a really difficult time. We're going to tuck the pins and try to make this pretty difficult to play on.
I've been on a research project. It's a 5-year project, and I'm 3 years into it. And as part of that project is digging up the history of Smithtown. And I was in the attic of the house, and I found an old map. And on the map, it showed the Nissaquag River, and it showed some of the older, or the properties that the original owners may have owned. But that stoked curiosity, and I started to look at the surrounding areas and realized that Smithtown Landing Country Club may have been part of the original states back in the early 1800s, late 1700s. So that led to a conversation with Michael Hebron, who is the World Golf Hall of Fame professional at Smithtown Landing, and he started telling me about the country club here from the 60s called Marywood Country Club. And as he was telling me about it, I asked about the little par 3 course that's tucked in the middle of the hills of the main course itself. And that's when he introduced the Gene Sarazen name, saying that Gene Sarazen was the gentleman that helped design that course, which was amazing. So people that may know golf know who Gene Sarazen is, but people that are not familiar with the game of golf, he's equivalent to a Babe Ruth player back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, and is one of the greatest golfers of all time. That led to more research, and we reached out to the World Golf Hall of Fame, who introduced us to some other people, and the longer story short is it led to a very nice, intimate conversation with Gene's oldest daughter, Mary Ann Sarazen, who tonight for the opening ceremony and the kickoff drove 900 miles with her daughter and son-in-law to honor her dad's course, honor Ed, the town, the officials, Michael Hebron, the 32 players that came together to participate, and it was a pretty fun experience, I think. I think everybody had a good time. So that's how this whole thing came together.
We want to wish all the players success over the weekend. We wish them the best, play well, and we want to thank David and the Sarazen family for putting this on in our town. Thank you very much.